welcome to this course on human-computer interaction. And this is a multidisciplinary field, and it encompasses like multiple fields, but we will mostly focus on psychology and design. So I've broken down this course into three different segments. Not really, but it's actually two. And the last one is just for to help us wrap up this whole thing. And what we're trying to get out of this course is being able to apply for a job, or at least know what the role of a UI UX designer is like, or in general a product designer. So you can see like this has sort of like a zoomed out and a micro picture to it. So this as a whole would be on user experience, and we will be doing a crash course on Figma. Not necessarily that we would look into everything, but the specifics rather than the generals of it. So we'll look into components, we'll look into assets, we'll look into variants, we'll look into instances. And coming back to the first part, UX, we'll talk about each of these sections, and under each of these there are going to be subsections too. So you can hope that it's going to be like quite in depth with each of these areas. And we would start off with the history, and you might be thinking, why would we need to know about the history of HCI? But I think like all these sections, they have some sort of objective. And for the first one, I think personally that having known like what the history of HCI is, it basically provides us with like context and how HCI evolved over time. And also I think it provides us with like guidance and probably future directions. And then we'll look into introduction with HCI, like the importance of it, some core concepts and models, and maybe some career paths. So the first two would be helping us to build the basic building block for the rest of the course. So you might be wondering what HCI is, probably, and HCI stands for human-computer interaction. Again, it's a multidisciplinary field, and it takes an account of several other fields to make sense of what it is. So you can see like there's computer science, there's design, there's psychology, some engineering, there's cognitive science. Also, this is what I am majoring in, or I majored in. So I majored in cognitive science and did my minor in design. And I'll talk a little bit more about myself at the end. And I think the name itself explains it, human-computer interaction. So which is basically how we interact with computers, and how we can design it better to make it more effective and easier to interact with these machines or computers or any products in general. So before we begin, I want to talk about like building the right mindset first. And I've listed down a few of the lines that I live by, and I think these are some of the lines I copied from one of my favorite books. It's called Atomic Habits. I'm pretty sure a lot of you might have read this. So the first thing you can see, I stated that little drops of water make a mighty ocean. And what I'm trying to say here is that at first you might think that this could be a little bit overwhelming, but hang on tight, trust me. Like once you get a bigger picture of the whole thing, once the small parts come together and makes it gives it a figure, you would understand like how interesting and fascinating this could be. And it's so easy to understand, and I'll try my best to make it easier to understand, and the way how I look at it. So what I would say is that you don't have to understand necessarily everything in this video, because as you keep on watching the rest of the videos and you maintain that streak of understanding, like where it's coming from and where it's going, actually you would see like slowly, but it helps you develop the whole idea of what this whole thing is about, what this whole course is about. Secondly, I think we should focus more on the journey over destination. Truthfully, there's nowhere we're trying to reach, but it's the journey itself that we would want to enjoy as much as we can, because your destination at the end of the day would probably be to secure a job. But I think being able to enjoy the process that you're going through is going to help you much more retain information better. I mean, that's what I found in my case. And third, try to focus on system and not goals. So an example of that would be, do not try to finish all the videos in one setting or in 2-3 days, because you're not going to retain as much information and it's not going to be effective. Rather, I would say that try to maintain a streak just the way you do with your Snapchat with your friends, and try to focus on one video at a time. And I would urge you to take notes and not just like watch it, because there's a lot that you can write in your own terms. And I would try to also urge you that try to relate it with your real life situations or circumstances as best as you possibly can, because that's something that helps me retain a lot of the information that I come across. So for me, example, whenever I'm just walking by or seeing some sort of ads or something, and I just try to relate it to like my design philosophy and practices, and try to think like how could this have been done better. So I'm not like actively trying to participate in it, but passively also I'm trying to compare, contrast, and have that going in my mind all the time, rather than like setting it apart as like an entire goal to itself. So number 4, I really believe that practices are underestimated. We do not understand like how much power it can hold if something is repeated over and over and over again, as it becomes like a part of you, and it reflects on your choices and decisions. And I think practices are heavily underestimated. See, back when I was thinking computer science, I would mostly focus on the concepts and how for loops, while loops worked, and how some of the data structures worked. Turns out that I had to retake the course because I never practiced enough times to implement it in my own work and understand the intricacies of how this whole process flows. So I think like it's very important to practice, and practices in this case would include making your own projects in Figma, and learning about better design practices on YouTube, or just Googling it out there. I think there's like a lot of articles on medium.com that talks about better design practices, and which that we will look into while we're exploring our resources. And last but not the least, it's compound effect. I have underestimated the power of compound effect, but it ties back to my first point that I made, which is little drops of water make a mighty ocean. And I think with time, as you stick with it and you have this become routinely part of your life, you kind of start to see effect of it. Of course, it's not going to take linear shape, but I think at some point, once you have start to grasp the whole idea of how this whole thing works together, I think you're going to take off way much faster from that point onwards. So think of it as like an exponential growth. I'm also like a big believer in using frameworks, and 3 of the main frameworks I find myself using in my daily life, although it's also used in design practices too. It's actually from there where I have started to implement it. So the first principle we talk about is the 80-20 principle. And hear me out. What I'm trying to say is like 20% of the efforts that you're going to put into something is going to yield 80% of your results. So remember when I told you that I would be focusing more on the specifics of Figma rather than just the general aspect of it? Yeah, that's what I was talking about, because a lot of times I've seen that even on like YouTube, there are a lot of like if you just go on and try to search up like Figma tutorials, you're going to see a lot of general videos that doesn't necessarily show you how to do one specific thing, and the ones that's mostly required while you're working as a UX designer or a UI designer. So a lot of those needs to be practiced, and I will probably be showing you the very specifics of what's actually needed to yield 80% of the results from the software. While we are going through the course, you will learn about something called design thinking, and it is like a 5-step process to go through. And although like I don't have the right picture right now, but it's a reiterative process of going forward and going back and making adjustments or improvements, and then going forward again. And lastly, we would learn about like emotional wheel, and that's something we would also need to be able to implement in our UX studies, because when we explored the section on emotions, I think that's where we would learn about how emotional wheel is implemented. And lastly, you might think like, why would you want to consider this course? And honestly, that's something I always ask myself before taking any actions. Because I would always like, and I think it's a great practice to have this mindset of thinking, what's the outcome of something that I'm giving my time to, right? Because our attention is finite, and so is our time, and we can't attend to everything. But coming back to why you should consider this course, see, first thing first, it helps you develop a design thinking skill, which is necessary nowadays, and not just like specifically for being able to become a designer, but also in general as a person, in able to solve your everyday problems. And you will see like how, when we have covered design thinking, how you are able to implement that with your own life. And I'll throw on some examples of how I do it myself. You would be getting access to a lot of frameworks that we are going to be using throughout the course, and I think life could be made more simpler if it's designed with frameworks. A lot of frameworks are out there that makes our life easier, and thinking in terms of frameworks has helped me immensely for a very long time, and I vouch for this like big times. And the last thing is you are going to develop a lot of transferable skills. So if you're thinking like taking this, would you even if you do not want to pursue being a designer or anywhere in the creative field, I think you are going to develop a lot of other transferable skills while you are going through the UX part of this course, and also while you're exploring the tools and resources. So yeah, that's almost all about it. And the last thing I'd like to talk about is how I am planning to upload videos. I'm planning to upload videos almost every week. And I will be trying to create a playlist where you can find it like serially, and I'll try to number them all so that it's easier for you to find out like which one goes right after which. And yeah, I hope it's gonna be an amazing one. So stay tight. We are going to delve into a really fascinating world of human-computer interaction. And thank you all. Thank you so much for watching the video. Take care. Also, a couple of things about me. So I'm actually an international student currently pursuing my bachelor's in SFU in British Columbia, and I come all the way from Bangladesh, and I'm almost about to graduate now. And I thought it would be the best thing for me to pass on my ideas and knowledge and things that I have learned, and which could potentially help others, and things I wish I knew when I first started. So it's just a personal project. I do like to do this sort of work, any sort of creative pursuits, and like getting the opportunity to educate, things like that, and being able to combine all this. And I just felt like this would be fun to do something like this. And in some sense, it's kind of selfish because I'm doing this for myself as well. So anytime that I might feel lost, might just look into one of my own videos. But yeah, that's all about me.